Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new Altenew Craft Your Life podcast. We are so excited to have the amazing Kelly Taylor here with us today. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
It's always so fun to have a chat and catch up because you're everywhere, it seems, which is awesome. So thank you for making time to have a chat with us today. It's fabulous.
I have been very, very blessed to be very busy lately, and that is wonderful. I'm extremely grateful.
So for folks that may not, I don't know where they've been, maybe they've been out on a mission in Greenland or something, that do not know who Kelly Taylor is. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I am a card maker slash, I guess now illustrator. I guess that's part of my titles. Video content creator, YouTuber. So basically have always been crafty my whole life. And then I found card making about, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago. And that was like my de-stressor after my real job. And then about 2 years ago now, I actually quit my real job. And now this is my real job.
That's amazing that you made that jump. We're so grateful you did because we get more content, we get more illustrations and all of that. So that's very exciting.
I can only do it because my wonderful, supportive husband. He's willing to do all the extra just in case we did not. We couldn't go as far as we wanted to go. So he's great. He's great.
It's always good to have a good support team. So how did you first start crafting? How did that occur?
So I think probably like I've always been, even when I was younger, like crayons and colored pencils. And, when we would like pack up to go to my grandmother's house, like that was always what I wanted to bring, was my coloring books and all of that stuff. So always was a big fan of that. As I got older, like my mom isn't really crafty. She likes to create. Like she always made candy, she painted ceramics, like things like that, but not anything where like ink or anything that was messy, like nothing like that. And so I think probably the first one that I ever picked up just myself was I taught myself how to cross stitch when I was like 15. I also got it. Scrapbooking was super big in like the 90s. And so I was a scrapbooker. And in fact, this is terrible. My first scrapbook was like me and my high school boyfriend. But then when we broke up, like the saddest part about it was I had put all this work into this scrapbook and I was like, now what do I do with it? Like I kept it for years. And like later on, like guys that I dated, they'd be like, why do you still have this? And I was like, do you know how much work this was, sir?
It's not about him. Yes. It's about the paper.
So then from scrapbooking, then it kind of, this online thing is like only in the last decade. And so once those things started being offered, I actually found Jennifer McGuire did a Thinking Inking series that was on YouTube. And that is how I found card making. And
that's so many people.
Here we are. Thanks, Jen. No, she's great. She's amazing. But yes. Yeah, she's my gateway. Like so many people, like you said.
So many people. And the other one I hear a lot is like the companies like where you were a demonstrator, those are the other, it's either Jennifer McGuire or the demonstrator or a combo.
That's how I got into scrapbooking. Was one of my best friend, who's still my best friend. Her mom had a friend who was a demonstrator and she came over. And then that's how I ended up scrapbooking, because my best friend made me go to this thing. She was like, my mom's having this party. You have to come because I don't want to do it by myself. And I was like, okay. And then next thing I know, I own 8 pair of Deckling scissors. I mean, it just happened.
Now, do you still scrapbook is the question.
No.
No.
So, I tried. Isn't that so funny? This was several years after I had started card making. I wanted to do, and it wasn't even like a real scrapbook page, it was like a shadow box. But I used to do the
Yep.
12 by 12, scrapbooks.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, I'll just get a 12 by 12 page. I'll put in like her birth announcement and her photo, and I'll just do it like a scrapbook page. Girl, I sat there and stared at that thing like, but what do I do with all this space? Like there's so much area. I yeah, no. So now it's too big for me now. I need my 4.25 by 5.5. That makes me happy.
Now you could make a journal page on an A2
I
panel. They do have page protectors that
yes.
size. So,
I
because that's what I do now. I look at a 12 by 12 and I'm like, no, no. But the A2, I'm like, I can rock that little picture, little element, little this. I'm good to go,
yeah, that's great. I never tried again. After that's like kind of rock wall. I was like, nah, I don't think this
The
is
traumatic,
for me anymore.
the trauma of seeing a 12 by 12 page.
It's huge.
It's
Yeah.
ginormous. I don't know how we
I
ever
don't
did
know
it.
either.
I really don't
Do
know.
you remember when they had the
I
trend where it was just like one picture and like these huge flourish gems and like one flower and the rest of the page was blank?
yes,
I think
that
that
was
was the
our clean
beginning
and
of the
simple
end
queen.
for me because I was already like paring my formats down.
I had to make sure. I'm like, you haven't given up coffee. No, no.
No.
So Kelly is still on coffee. Yes,
Yeah. No, actually, I drink tea every morning and then I switch to
I do.
coffee.
Oh, see, I start coffee and go to tea.
Oh.
I go the reverse. Yeah, but it's delicious. A delicious combo. There's so many choices out there for
I
delicious
just like
teas.
hot beverages. I'm not a
Yes,
cold beverage
especially this
girl.
time of year. Especially this time of year. It's too cold to have
Yeah,
cold.
but even in the summer, I'm like, will I do a hot
Sticking with a hot
coffee?
beverage.
Yes, yes, I will.
Sign me up. Now, how in this big crafting world did you find Altenew?
Um, oh man, I'm trying to think back. They did, oh, what was the name of that set? But they were doing something that other companies weren't doing. And so one of the first things that they did, which I really loved, was they had they were like a boulder, almost like a brushstroke sentiment that had the coordinating dies. And that wasn't really a thing. Like you had to because I for so long was a one layer card maker and then I would have to
Yep,
find ways to like stamp my sentiment into my one layer but still make it legible, which was
yep,
very challenging sometimes. And then they were started coming out with like dyes were a thing obviously, but not a lot of people were die cutting their sentiments. Like I think a
no,
lot of companies were like, well, what do you need them for? And I was over here like, I need them. I need them so my sentiment will stand out. But
yep,
then they've always had beautiful florals, and I'm a floral girl. So, like, when their first couple of sets started rolling out and they were just like these gorgeous detailed florals, like, I'm a colorist. Forget about it. I was like, how do I buy all of the things? Just all of it. Yeah, always love their florals. Still do. Like when I do guest design or anything like that and like I'm looking at what sets I want, it's almost always florals.
they're so pretty. I mean, they're just it just yeah, and the way especially our older layering, that's what got me. I'm like, it looks real. Like, I couldn't believe the realism in the stamps, and it's still we still with the outline images, the stencils, the realistic
Yes.
look
They
is
are very
just
so like
amazing.
I'm one of those people who's like layering challenged. I never could
Yeah,
do a layering stamp set, but they oftentimes in their layering sets would offer also the outline. So I
yeah,
would buy the layering sets And then I would only use the outline because like I loved the image, so then I would just color it.
And that shows the versatility though. You can layer, you can use the outline. So there's a lot there that, even if you don't want to do the layering, you still can have the outline and create beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful
I'm a
things.
big fan of anything that's versatile because I want to get the most bang for my buck.
Absolutely. And so what is your favorite project? I know you mentioned the one layers, and your one layers make us crafters speechless.
Thank you.
But what is your favorite project to create?
Um, my favorite part right now, like I can't say all time. It probably is one layer cards, like just because it's you go from nothing to like a whole scene. Like that's still magic. I still love that. But right now, I really, really am loving like 3D embossing folders. And Altenew has some of the best ones. Like because they're so, like you said before, they're so realistic. So they're
Yeah.
super fun to use. They're very versatile. You can use them to just add texture. You can use them and add color to them. I really, really am enjoying the 3D embossing folders. Plus, it's something that's new and you can use them a little bit differently. You can ink up the folders or you can add the color after with watercolor or with one of my favorite ways to do it is with the metallic watercolors because that looks
Yes.
wicked cool. Um, so
Yes.
yeah, that right now is probably like I'm in a texture phase, I think.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that because as crafters, we do go through phases. We may not realize it, but we do have, like, looking back now, I can see kind of phases I've gone through. And you kind of land in, like, I'm a clean and simple card. I kind of always have
Yeah.
been, but the phases I've gone through in that kind of category. So I'm glad you mentioned that because I think every crafter goes through phases of their craft,
Oh,
basically.
I definitely, and I think you're right. I think it is harder to see it when you're in it. But then when you go back,
Yeah.
like sometimes when I'm stuck, like I'll go back and look at my own cards for inspiration. Like, oh, what was this a technique that I like that I want to revisit, or a color palette, or a stamp set, or whatever. And like a lot of times when I go back, I'll be like, ooh, girl, you was really feeling like a pink, green, yellow thing this whole month, this whole 6 months.
It's good to have those though. And I love that you mentioned that because that's always a question that our crafters want to know. When you're stuck, what do you do? So that's a very popular question. So that's a good to go back and
Oh
just kind
yeah.
of, it's like shopping your stash. You're shopping your own creativity kind
Well,
of,
that's
and it
why
helps you
like
go forward.
not everybody has Instagram, but I do. That's the easiest way to go back and look over the stuff that I've made because I'm
Yeah.
sharing it all over there. So I just go and scroll and make it back 2 or 3, 4 years, and I'm like, hey, look at this thing that I did. Maybe I could do that again.
And it feels new again because it's been like 4
Right.
years. So even though you're kind of shopping your own past projects, it's given it time to breathe, and now you can kind of bring it back and make it fresh again. I love that. That's a great idea. What are your biggest influences right now, do you think, in your projects and your crafting?
I don't know. Huh. My biggest
There are
influence.
some tough questions on
Yeah.
the podcast.
Huh. Well, I think like I mean, for me there's like some staple things. So it's always florals, it's always but I mean oftentimes I am super inspired by other crafters. Like seeing their like something like Instagram. Um
Yep.
it's I like watching, their little reels. I don't do reels, but I like watching other people's reels. I'm here to support them. I'm here to support them. Um, but like just seeing like the different things that they have, that they do or the way they put things together. And then, I can look at it and be like, that's really cool. I wonder if I did this, or I wonder if I tried this with this, like, would it be a similar result or would it be different? Or sometimes there's no reel, it's just the card, and you're like, okay, how did they do that? But I like looking, I mean, I think other people's cards making is fantastic. And I like supporting them and, seeing what they make and then, doing my own take on it. I also, and this is something that is a privilege that I have not previously had. And it's because now this is my full time job. Before, I only had a set amount of time that I could craft. And it was typically, because I have young children, it was typically after my kids were in bed. Okay. I think that
Yep.
happens to a lot of parents. So it's like you get like this 1 hour to yourself. How are you going to spend it? I spend it in the craft room. Now, because it is my full time job, I can experiment and I can play more because I have the time to do it. Because now it is my job to do those things. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But I do think probably being able to play and experiment is super influential because sometimes it works, which is awesome, and sometimes it don't, which still teaches me something, teaches me what
Yes.
does or does not work together. Um,
Yep.
so yeah, actually I was playing around with cover plate not too long ago, and I was using the brushed gold cardstock, and I was like, oh, but I
Yep.
really want to like kind of make it so that you could see like in the embossing that it was darker. And so I was like, how am I going to do that? I tried like different inks and stuff, and I was like, no. And then I went to go like clean off the inks, and I found that like if I rubbed it, I could remove some of the gold. It had
Oh,
that reaction
wow.
from the ink, and I was like, "This
Yep.
is amazing!" Like, totally not at all what my intention was, but then it gave me, like, gold embossing with, like, silverish kind of edges. It was
Ooh,
fantastic.
I
I
get
haven't
it.
used it yet, but
Yes.
I will. But, like, yes, like, just
And
stuff like
that's
that, like, it gives you just an opportunity to, kind of play around and experiment. So, probably other crafters and all the things that they're making, which I love, and then doing my own kind of playing and experimenting, I think is the answer to the
I
question.
think I think that's I always tell people have a play and they're like, what does that mean? And I'm like, just sit with your products and have fun. Don't have a goal in mind.
Right.
Just pick it up and go. There's no requirement. There's no you have to do this, you have to do that. Just go. And I think that helps your inspiration if you're stuck. If you can just sit and touch your products and play, it's a
I
good thing.
totally agree with you. I think a lot of the problem and why people don't do that is probably the same problem that I had is they have a limited amount of time. So if they use their
Yep.
limited amount of time to just play around and not create anything, then when they walk away, they don't feel like they're accomplished. Because let's be
Yep.
honest, one of the great things about making a card is it is a bite-sized start to finish accomplishment that you can do that's tangible, that's achievable in the short amount of time that you have. So when you
Yep.
just sit down and play with no goal of making anything, then like at the end of it you're like, "Oh, I have nothing." That's not true. You have all of these lessons and inspirations and things like that, but you don't have anything tangible to hold. So I
Yep.
think that that's
That's a good way to
hard.
put it. And it had to be hard in your previous life going in. It's probably a little stressful and overwhelming because you're like, "Oh, I'm on the clock. I only got an hour and I gotta make something." And so that had to be hard, to be creative and let things just flow when you're on the clock, essentially, in a bad way, because you're like, "I have this set period, and I have to be creative, and I have to do my best work." So
It was not as bad until I joined my first design team and like I had my first deadline. Then I really was on the clock. Like I have to make this today because I have to work tomorrow and then I picked up 2 hours of overtime and I have to get it done today and photographed and blogged, and all of those things. There were plenty of times where it was super stressful because I was like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. They're going to fire me from the design team because I'm not holding up my end of the bargain. And I have a problem, and it's a double-edged sword because it's a good and a bad thing. I struggle with not putting my best foot forward. So like if
Yep.
I just think the card is okay, I nobody sees it.
Yep.
Because if I'm
Yep.
representing myself and a
Yep.
company, like I want it to be
Yep.
something that I am proud to put my name on and proud to put their name on. So sometimes that is hard because I do
Yep.
have a deadline. And maybe they're like, hey, we just need something. We'll take okay. And I'm like, no, you won't, because I'm not giving it to you.
It's in the vault. Nobody sees it.
So, yeah, that is very challenging. So, there's been plenty of times where I have, this is not healthy. Don't do this. This is terrible. This is a toxic trait. Like, where I have gone without, like, I'll go with like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. You know what I mean? Because I have stayed up to do what I needed to do because that's my obligation, but also because of my
Yep.
own personal like bar, I'm not going to put out something that I don't love. Now, there are
Yeah.
things, of course, that like in the moment I'm like, okay, this is I'm happy with this, whatever. And then I look back on it and I'm like, who
I think we all do that.
are you?
Was I sleep deprived that day? Why did I put that out? What happened? Yes.
Exactly. Like I'll go look back and I'll be like, ooh, how'd you slip through the cracks?
Who was guarding the castle this day? And somebody was asleep on the job. Yes. I think we all have those though,
Oh yeah.
that we look back and we're like, oh my gosh, my name is on that. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
because I got into, which you're probably the same way, like I got into card making when like online, like everybody interacting online was a thing. And so for us old
Yeah.
folks, like it used to be Flickr.
Yep.
You know, they had the group.
Or split coat stampers, was it?
Oh,
There was another one.
oh, what is it? It's still around.
I'm really old. I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm
Oh my
really old.
gosh,
And
what is the name of it? Split coat stampers?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's split
Oh my
coats.
gosh,
I
that
think
took a
it
minute.
was.
But
Yeah.
like so like Flickr was a
I
thing
know.
and like Hero Arts used
Yep.
to run, they would have hostesses. You could be a hero hostess and then you would like, you know, flutter around to everybody's like different projects and leave them comments. So I started on Flickr. I never closed down my Flickr. It's still out there. If you go look for it,
Oh,
you'll be able to
wow.
see literally
That's so
my
cool,
first
though.
cards that
So
I
our
ever
listeners and
made,
watchers.
and it's under my previous name. It's under Lativola, not Taylor.
Yep.
But yeah, and girl, some of them are ugly. They are like we're just gonna call it like we see it. But I was still very much learning my style, very
Yes.
much learning my style. And I
Yep.
was actually just having a conversation with a crafty girlfriend recently. And because you see a lot of card makers that are, you know, there's always a turnover. Some people fall out of the hobby, some people are just getting into the hobby. And, you know, you see new faces working for companies all the time, which is great. But sometimes you'll
Awesome.
see someone who I don't want to say they come up too quick, like that because that sounds
I
like I
know.
think
I
they need to
understand
earn
it.
it, and that's not what I mean. Like, but they're like
No.
they go from
No.
like I'm just a person who makes cards in my craft room to like now everybody's viewing my cards. And I was having a conversation with my girlfriends, and I was like, dude, I kind of feel bad for them because like my ugly is hidden on Flickr for like 2 to 3 years where I figured out my style. And because this person got noticed by companies right away, like they're going through their metamorphosis in front of
Yes.
everybody. So they're
Yeah.
going through and figuring out their own style and maybe, their version of their ugly, but
Yep.
everybody can see it. It's not hidden away on an old Flickr account.
Mine's on my blog. It's hidden years
Yeah,
ago. It's
see,
like hidden.
mine.
I had a different blog name. It's way back there. So
Do you
yeah,
know why I
mine's
started
hidden
my
as
blog?
well.
I was on the Flickrs and I was like sharing my cards and I was commenting and I was like, this is so great. Because I didn't have anybody in my life who understood card making. So it was
Yep.
wonderful to
Yep.
like see other like-minded people. And then I wanted to enter a challenge. And they were like, make sure to post it on your blog. And I was like, blog? What's
My
a
what?
blog? I don't want to, what? So then I had to go and research what a blog was. And like literally my first blog post is just a picture of my card. There's no text.
The card explains
Yeah,
itself.
that's what I
It's that
linked.
good.
That's what I linked up.
Oh,
I was like, there's no text. You said I had to blog it. Here it is on a blog.
there it is.
I've met the requirements, the bare minimum, but I've met them. Look at my card. Thank you.
Now, talking about evolution, so your YouTube channel, and you are famous for this. Anybody that knows you knows not only do they get to see a beautiful card be made, but they get story
Yep.
time. How did story time on your YouTube evolve?
Storytime on my YouTube channel started because I am a colorist and coloring takes a long time.
Yeah.
So when you're voicing over your video, you can only say, and we're going to add the shadows here, and we're going to go over it with our midtone, and we're going to do flicking, and we're, this, that. You can only say it so much before you're like,
Yeah.
I cannot say it one more time. But I didn't want to, I tried it. Everybody was doing music back then. You just have
Yeah.
these long stretches of royalty free music.
Yeah.
And I didn't really like that. Like personally, when I watched videos, I was like, meh, I don't really want to listen to this. But like, I felt like I had to because then I didn't want to miss any instruction.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm just going to talk through it. Like, I'm just going to talk about other stuff. I'm going to talk about life. I'm going to talk. So that is literally how it happened. It wasn't a conscious choice. It came about from a need to fill that time. So then, I would just tell whatever, silly little stories. Story like back then, my son was a toddler. Now my daughter's a toddler. Like, so I would just tell like silly little stories and stuff. But I am very grateful for that because it has allowed me to build a relationship with my followers that I think is different. I
Yeah.
know the people who, even though I don't know them, in real
Yeah.
life, I know the people who return to my channel and who share their lives with me. I know the names of their dogs and I know that, their mother passed away a year ago. And like you would think like once you start to get so many people that you wouldn't remember all that stuff. And I'm sure that I don't remember all of the stuff. But when you have
Yeah.
people who consistently come back and engage, you remember them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You read their comments, you reply back to their comments. There is a relationship. Um,
Yeah.
and then for the ones, sometimes we are blessed to go to in person, like, creative, we were just talking about creativation, to meet
Yeah.
people and stuff. And sometimes you do see, especially at like craft retreats or
Yeah.
is it called, I don't, is Simon Says Create a Craft Retreat? I don't even
It's
know.
create.
Yeah.
Yeah. Create. Yep. Yep.
So like that I've been to, I think every year but once. Like I've worked a table for different companies that I work for. And so then you get to meet people in real life. And like there's one lady, I've seen her God, four or five times. And so like she just actually just posted on my Facebook page. I had shared something about, the end of the year and stuff. And she was like, I'm so
Yep.
glad I got to update my Kelly photo this year. And like she posted a picture. She literally has, her name's Shelly. Like she literally has multiple pictures of us over the years as she's come to different things and we've seen each other.
Oh,
So story time allows me to build a relationship that is different than just
yeah,
I teach and you learn, which I'm very, very
yeah,
grateful for. And so like doing things like classes and stuff, people have asked, well, will you only do classes or will you give up YouTube or I'm like, no, I will never give up YouTube because that offers me an opportunity to do something that I think is pretty special.
yes. Yes, and it's funny because at the retreats you've been with Altenew, people are like, "Well, what about story
I know.
time?" They even wanted story time in the class. So
Well, and I always feel bad because
it's
I was like,
completely
guys,
left.
no, not everybody wants story time. And this is like, people paid for this. Like, I'm not, they paid for instruction. So, like, I always have to be
But
very
you just
clear when I'm talking about it on YouTube. Like, there will not be story time. And I've had people like send me messages and they're like, if you just did extra story time, I would pay for that. And I'm like, but I can't just like this is my real life. Like I'm telling you stories from my real life. I can't just make up an interesting story. I don't know. Maybe I should start reading audiobooks or something.
but I remember, and you did give a little story time in the October retreat. I remember because something happened, and so you were like, "Okay, quick little story time." So you did it. You got it
Yeah,
in
like
there.
if it
So
comes about naturally, like I think that's one
yeah,
thing. But like there are times where people will be like, "Oh, are you gonna, you're gonna have a story time?" And I was like, No, no." And then like sometimes not all my like I can't tell all my stories because not all my stories are
yeah,
appropriate. Like I used
yes,
to before like YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff where you could go live and podcasts and everything. They had Periscope. And I
yep,
used to do Periscope. But I had to put a warning label on my desk like to let
yep.
people know like I'm an adult. This is an adult
Yep.
area.
Your disclaimer.
Like cuz people would be like, "Oh, can you tell me about like your job?" Well, I can, but it's those are adult themes.
Yep, yep,
So I
yep,
keep it very family friendly on YouTube. Very family
yep.
friendly.
And it's amazing. And so we've talked about you being a colorist, we're talking about classes, and a couple weeks after this releases, Altenew is so honored to have Kelly teach a class, which is going to be called Colorful Expression: The Wonders of Artist Markers with Kelly Taylor, which is so exciting. It has two of our new artist marker sets. And what else is in that, Kelly? Can you tell us what else
You
is in the
know,
class that's very
I think
exciting?
there is something special in there. So I was totally thrilled when you guys reached out to me. Super excited. So we do have the two marker sets that will be coming out, which are great. They're beautiful combinations. But then I was also blessed enough to actually illustrate a stamp and die set for specifically for the class based on the colors of the markers that we will be using. So yay!
It was amazing to see your process as you went through that, and they're beautiful. So it's you will be coloring with the markers with Kelly Taylor Designs. So very cool that she illustrated those, and the sets are
Thank
gorgeous.
you.
What are you most excited about for this class?
I think that I am probably most excited about being able to, because you guys, like, if you know anything about me, I love versatility. Like, when I draw my sets, I want you to be able to take it home and get the absolute most out of what you have. So I think I'm most excited to because like I can play with it digitally. You know what I mean? Like a little bit.
Yeah.
But I love getting the sets and then stamping them out and then like moving all the pieces parts around together and seeing how they all work together and then, sharing that with you guys. So I'm very excited to just to get my hands on them and start playing around with the different ways that we can use it so that you will be able to see, okay, well, maybe we made these whatever four or five cards, but I still have four or five other ideas that I can still use this set for. Because crafting is an investment. That's why you buy a stamp and
Yes.
not a sticker. Because your stamp you can
Yep.
use forever as long as you're buying quality stamps. You can use that forever. I have stamps that I bought 14 years ago and I can pull them out right now and they'd still stamp. So it's
Yep.
always an investment. But I want you to be able to use it again and again and again. So I'm very excited.
And the great thing is too is you designed these to work with markers. Like
Yes.
these stamps were built. You can use them for watercolor, you can use them for anything you want to. But when Kelly designed these, it was with the goal to teach coloring with the
Yes.
artist markers. So that's another great thing about this set is it was built to do this. This was the goal of the origins of the stamp set, which is very very exciting. So what do you have? So we're going to have folks out there. We're going to have two categories. We're going to have beginners and we're going to have advanced colorists. So what would you tell a beginner that's like, "Oh my gosh, like she colors all the time. I don't know. I'm really nervous." What would you tell them?
I think that, and this goes with anything, it's not just coloring. You have to just start. Everybody begins somewhere. And people almost don't believe me when I tell them this. I owned my alcohol markers for 2 years before I ever really used them because
Wow.
I never got the results that I was seeing other people get. And so I would get
Yep.
discouraged and then I wouldn't want to use them. And I'd go back to watercolor or I'd go back to, oh, I was a big ink blender back then. Woo, girl. But I wanted the
Oh yes.
dimension. This is how crazy I was. Like, this is how I was like, I want the dimension. I would cut apart my stamped images so I could ink blend them. And then I would puzzle piece them
Oh,
back together.
very cool. Love it.
It
Love
works,
it.
but it's a
Love.
lot of work.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
That was the olden days.
yeah. So, but I just kept going back to it. I kept, there are people out there now, fortunately, myself, but there were people that came before me, that could teach you about shading and how to lay down color and the dimension. And so I just kept going back and I just kept practicing. And you cannot get any better if you do not physically do it. I mean, you have to practice. And that's true for everybody, for including myself.
Yeah.
I'm still learning things. So that is the first thing. Like, as a beginner, understand we all start somewhere and there's no shame in whatever leg of the journey you're on. Like, we all start somewhere. And so if it's something that's important to you and you're like, hey, I've invested in these markers, I want to use them, I want to be happy with the results, then you have to go through, I call it the ugly stage. It's like the ugly stage of
Yep.
watercolor. It always is.
You got to push
You got to
through.
push through.
Yes.
So, but it's the
Yes.
same thing. I mean, in any learning anything new, there's always like this ugly, hard stage. And if you let that stop you, you're never going to get here, which is where we've learned something, we've honed a skill, we've built muscle memory. And so we have this opportunity to then be better. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the struggle starts again because now you're here becomes you're here
Yeah.
and we have to do it again. And that's how you just get consistently better. But as a beginner, you have to just start. You have to just try. Just be willing to try. For advanced colorists, um, this is funny because it's probably not the answer they're expecting. You have to be teachable.
That's a good
You have
one.
to
I
be
haven't heard
teachable
that one ever.
because once
That is
once you have somebody who, and I've taught them in
yep.
classes, in person classes. I've had
Yep.
people who, which is, it's not hurting my feelings any because you're the one who paid for the class and you're going to decide what you get out of it. But I've had people who will come in and take the class and they will say, well, I already know how to do that. And then they want to do it on their own. then what have you paid for?
Yeah. It's kind of the question is how can I help you? I want to help you, but
Correct.
how? How
So
do I help?
if you are an advanced colorist, you have to be teachable. And again, this includes myself. I'm still learning
Yep.
things because there are other artists out there, card makers, fine artists, people in between that are using techniques that I'm not 100% on, that I'm not,
Yep.
super familiar with, or maybe I've never seen before. And so, in order to improve my coloring, I have to be teachable. I have to learn from their
Yep.
instruction to make myself a better colorist. But if you are an advanced colorist and you're just like, well, you're not teaching me anything new, I know that, and you're not even willing to listen, then you will always be this level colorist.
Yep.
And not that there's anything wrong with that. This may be where you wanted to reach and you're happy with that. That's totally
Yes.
fine. That's great.
Yep.
But if you are
Yep.
somebody who's like, okay, well, I'm here and I want to be here, you have to be teachable.
That's a good one because that it is really a huge consideration. You have to be willing.
Yes.
You have to be willing to get in there. It's like willing to start. So it kind of fits with
Yeah.
both almost because you have to be willing to start. You have to be willing to learn a new craft. It's like card making. When you came into it, most people watched videos or
Yeah.
watched, so they wanted to learn. And I think that's as crafters, I don't think we ever stop
No.
learning. I don't think there's ever a point that we can get to a point where we do something very well,
Yes.
but I think there's always room for, oh, somebody did this tip and it's
But I
excellent.
don't think that just applies to crafters. I think that's true in life.
You know, I
I
think
think
it's
you
true in
should
life too.
always be
Yeah.
learning.
That's my goal. I want to learn one new thing each day. It may be something silly, like put the coffee mug under the Keurig when you start it. I learned my lesson for the day. I've learned that one a couple times, but it learns something new
That lesson
every
has also
day.
come to my house.
Now when I hear it start, I'm like, I look up and I'm like, is there stuff
You got
there?
like
With the
PTSD
pan
from
and
your
hearing
coffee
that
mate.
noise. Basically, yes.
That's
I
great.
knew you'd understand. I'm a fellow coffee lover. And we're so excited for this class. This class is going to be amazing, and yeah, you're going to create some beautiful projects with a stamp set and die set designed by Kelly, which is it just makes it more special. I'm sure for you as
Oh
well.
yeah.
I mean, as a crafter to to work with a set you designed in your class is amazing. I can't even imagine for you to be doing it. It's going to be
Oh,
amazing.
I'm super excited. I like I said when you guys reached out to me, I was like, this is so cool. Like I've never done this before.
Well, we were so excited. So we're so excited for the upcoming class because, as we said, Kelly's been everywhere. So we're so excited she was able to do the class with us. So now we have, do you have, I mean, we usually ask this question, do you have a fun fact that you would like to share that's going on currently?
A fun fact. I don't know.
There are some difficult, but they look easy in the, in the, in the, in the podcast questions that we send you, but there are some that are tricky.
A fun fact. Just like in
Yes,
general,
or
just
a
like in
happening.
life,
Yeah, maybe like a little store, a little kind of a story tidbit, kind of,
a
a
fun
little for
fact.
our wonderful podcast.
I failed high school art class.
No. Do you want to just send like your teacher a card now and be like,
I
look what
did.
I did?
I failed
Can
high
I
school
get an
art
A
class.
now?
And so like that's why like I always tell people like keep going. Even
Yes.
if it's something that you love and you're passionate about it and like God has given you a heart for it, like keep going because there will be stumbling blocks and there will be things that get in your way. But if this is something that you're truly like you have a heart for it, um keep going. I did. I totally
Yeah.
failed high school art class. He and I didn't see eye to eye on what he thought I should be doing. Now, to be
Yep.
fair, I was an obstinate child. So I'm sure I was part of the problem where he was probably trying to teach me like the fundamentals of art. And
Yep.
I was like, I don't really want to do that. Which now God is paying me back for with my children, like 1,000 times over, 1,000,000 times
That was
over.
my that was my grandmother's threat. I hope you get a kid just like you. And Kelly, I think we would have been friends as youth because my response was, well, then I will know exactly what he wants, won't I? So
It's great.
our family runs on sarcasm and wit. So
So this is a funny story about my husband, but it just goes to show you like we are totally two peas in a pod. So when he was like little, he didn't have a pacifier, but he sucked his thumb, and his parents were trying to break
yep.
him of it, and they tried everything. And so finally, his dad told him, like, every time I catch you sucking your thumb, you have to pay me. I think it was like a dime or a nickel or something like that. And so my husband goes to his room, goes in his piggy bank, comes back with a $5 bill, hands it to his dad, and goes, "Let me know when that runs out." I'm like, our children were just doomed to be obstinate, like just doomed to be difficult children. But that's okay.
You knew what was coming.
That's okay because I am hoping, typically with difficult children, such as you or myself or my husband or my
Yes.
children, um, if you can build within them that self-confidence, that self-worth, that
Yep.
they are inherently worthy, you can build somebody who will stand up when nobody else will, who will do
Yes.
what's right because it's right, because they have the
Yes.
self-confidence to do that. So hopefully that is what we are doing. We are building adults that will have their own opinions, not just go along with
Yes.
what everybody else is. They're not jumping off the bridge because everybody else is jumping off the bridge, kind of thing.
Correct.
We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see.
I
But yeah, no.
mine's going to be 28 in a couple of weeks. Well, actually, after this podcast airs, he will be 28, and he's a public interest attorney, so he's an advocate for those who can't advocate for
That's
themselves. So it did work
wonderful.
out for me. So
And like all those years, like
so
when
we'll
he
check
was
back with
5 and he
Kelly.
was just giving you his opinion and you were like, I'm not going to make it. Now you're like, yes, winning.
Exactly. So we'll check back with Kelly in like 15 years and see where Kelly's at.
Oh, Lord, please. Oh, I hope we're doing it right.
I'm sure you're doing it perfectly. I'm sure you are. Okay, now is the fun, wild, crazy 6 degrees. I call it 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon of crafting.
Okay.
We'll give you a random word and you connect it back to crafting in any way you can. So, and you can do the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. That is so allowed with this. The first one is not bad, I don't think. It's heart.
Heart.
Yes, like a
So
heart.
is it just
Yes.
one word? Is it like words association?
Yep, just one. So connect it back to crafting any way you would like.
Die.
That's a good one. There's a lot of beautiful heart dyes. There are. Absolutely. Okay. Then we have shake. These make my favorite. So
Card.
yes. Because you shake, 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 shake once you're done. And that there's something about it. I don't know if you do this too, but after I make one of those, I'm distracted for like the day because I want to shake it because it's just so
Oh,
fun.
yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And then your final word, you didn't get bad words today. Your final word is plant.
Plant.
Yeah.
Plant. I don't. Oh, plant. I have a black
Yes.
thumb, right?
That's okay. That's what I think a lot of us crafters do. I think that's why we create pretty things on paper because we can't do it in real life.
Yeah. Plant. Plant. Like a plant. No, I don't like that. Like a plant stamp, like a stamp of plants. Plants.
We do have those. We have succulents. We have succulents
Oh,
in
we
the
do.
Altenew store.
Yeah, I've killed those as well.
Yeah, we have the succulents. Yes, I did too. I had a Franken succulent. He was so cute. He was in a Frankenstein thing. And we had him by the window because he needed the light. But as you know, live in a cold state, in the winter, he didn't make it. He didn't make it. It was so
I
sad.
have
Yeah.
two plants I've managed to keep alive, but it's only because they sit directly on my kitchen counter, and so I have to see
Oh,
them to water them every day. We once moved them because we were hosting a party, and so we moved them to another room. 2 weeks later, I was like, "They're dead. I've killed."
a lot of them come back though. You give
Those
them some
two. So
water
I
and they
had
start perking
three. The
right up.
third one was official. Like he was R.I.P. Like he had
Ouch.
gone to be with Jesus. But the other two I was able to revive. But the third one, no, he
Yeah,
didn't
you have
make
two
it.
plants. That's so good. See, I can do vegetables, but plants.
Yeah.
The flowers I buy like at Lowe's and put them in my front yard. Those last for like a month, and I really have nothing to do with it. I just put them in the soil.
I
I
don't
can't
even do
grow
that.
them.
My husband
Um,
does.
yeah, so it's so pretty though. It really is
Yes,
nice. Flowers are
they
beautiful.
are. I agree. I love
Thank
when he
God,
does it.
thank goodness we have the stamps so we can create our own garden.
Amen.
And with Kelly's class, you can add dimension and make your flowers look real. So there, we connected our plants back in.
That is true. I can teach you how to
Yeah.
color plants. I cannot teach you how to keep them alive. I don't have that skill
And they
set.
look realistic. We have to add that. They look super realistic. So you could die cut it and put it in your window
Just
and
put it
have
on a
your own
toothpick
little
and put it in the
Kelly
soil.
flower garden. Get a popsicle stick and pop them down in a planter, and there you go.
It's a great cat craft with your kids. Make your own flower pot.
Yeah. Lots of learning in this podcast today. We had lots of learning today. Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us and making time. It is always so awesome to get to hang out with you and have a chat and catch up on what's going on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always nice to see you and catch up. And I'm super excited about the class. I'm super excited to see everyone, and be able to interact and hopefully let everybody walk away with a little bit more skill than they had before they came.
And we have if you haven't signed up yet, because this is a couple weeks before, there are 3 pre-recordeds and there's a live with Kelly. So you get to craft with Kelly, which I think is my favorite. That live session is just so much fun because everybody adds in and asks questions, and it's just, you get to have almost your own personal story time kind of.
The interaction is my favorite part of the live class. So don't be afraid to ask questions because I love that.
And there is a Facebook group, and Kelly can look at your photos of stuff you make, which is, I think, the best part of the whole thing is seeing what they make with the products. It's just amazing. They're amazing. So thank you again. And to everyone out there, thank you for joining us in. And don't forget to craft your life and join us next month to see who our amazing guest is joining us. We'll see you next time, everyone. Bye.
Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and everywhere you can find podcasts to keep up with every new episode. Email us at support@altenew.com with your feedback. And don't forget to craft your life.
Hello crafters, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching.